Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Friday, the 3rd of May, 2019. Welcome, Smaulgld mug stackers and game changers. Tonight's topic is the Mueller report versus the Russian hoax. We're going to take a look at a letter that was just released by the White House counsel that may give us some indication on where all of this is headed. We're going to get into that a little later on the program. We're going to take a deep dive into that letter. I think it holds the key to how all this is going to shake out in the coming months, whether there's going to be a release of classified information by the Trump administration and what the plans are for the Democrats to try to continue to pursue impeachment. Also, we have an interesting story about a bizarre California ballot law. We'll get into that. Facebook has plans to issue its own coin. We're going to talk about the implications of that. And Trump met today, had a phone call with Vladimir Putin. All right, so let's get into the markets and then we'll get into the stories of the day. So today was a good day all around for gold, silver, cryptocurrencies, Dow Jones, NASDAQ. It was just only not a good day for the US dollar. The Dow rose nearly 200 points, up 0.75% to 26,504. The NASDAQ up 1.5 to 8164. It was up 127 points. And the S&P 500 rose just about 1%, up 28 points to 2945. Silver had a nice rebound today, up 31 cents, still under $15 to $14.90, up over 2%. Gold, a decent day, up $8. Up 0.64% to $12.78, and platinum up $20 and palladium up $10. So big moves there. Cryptocurrencies rose big overnight. They've pulled back a little bit, still finishing higher over the past 24 hours. Bitcoin at 5670, up 5%. Ethereum up 3.5% to 165. Bcash up 8% to 288. Litecoin up 8% to 7786. And, well, we'll leave it at that. All right, well, let's get into the stories of the day. And we've also got some decent Moronica for you tonight. So sit back and remember, if you want to comment on the proceedings tonight, just put Smaulgld, Smaulgld, so I can see your comment. Otherwise, it's hard to pull out comments and comment on them. Remember, tomorrow night will be Saturday Night Silver with Smaulgld. We will discuss only silver, so come with your silver questions if you have any. And Sunday will be Solid Gold Sunday with Smaulgld, and possibly Seamus will make an appearance there, so book those on your calendar. Most likely around 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the United States. All right, well, let's see. Where should we start? Well, we did the markets already. Oh, yeah, we do have some. The job markets report today was probably why the stock market rose. The U.S. economy added 262,000 jobs in April, and the unemployment rate down to 3.6%. I believe that unemployment rate is the lowest since 1969. Yes, indeed. According to NBC News, 263,000 jobs in April. Unemployment rate at 3.6%, lowest since 1969. And the 363,000 jobs was higher than 190,000 jobs that were expected. And they had expected the unemployment rate to dip from 3.9% to 3.8%, and it fell to 3.6%. Interestingly, we've seen Donald Trump and Kudlow pressure and browbeat in public the Fed to lower rates. In fact, we saw Trump actually tweet that not only should the Fed lower interest rates, that they should do QE. Well, I don't know if this is at the direction of Donald Trump, but Vice President Pence is saying the Fed should cut interest rates. I wouldn't be surprised if we do get an interest rate cut this fall. The reason for that is interest rate hikes and cuts have a delayed effect, and I think Trump very much wants to have a roaring economy going into the 2020 election. Of course, if you get a rate cut in the fall of 2019, or maybe 2 rate cuts, that may have a salubrious impact on the economy in 2020. Speaking of 2020, Democrats just piling on with the number of candidates running. It looks like William de Blasio is going to throw his hat into the ring. A very, very crowded ring indeed. Not sure what kind of chances he may have. Probably none, but he may do enough damage perhaps in New York City in any type of New York State primary to maybe deprive some of the front runners some momentum. But I'm not sure how popular he is in New York either. Now, we also had, let's talk about this. We had a, this is, yeah, I'm going to play the music. I am going to play the music. Uh-oh, we got a moron here.
Presenting the distinguished international news commentator and foreign correspondent,
Smaulgld. This has been an extraordinary week in world affairs.
No, I told Hillary Clinton that that's moronic.
Yeah, I got to file this under, well, it's not just moronic, it's actually dangerous. California passed a law along party lines 27-10 that would keep Trump off the 2020 ballot unless he submits 5 years worth of tax returns. Now, all these types of rules, when you make law and you aim them specifically at an individual, that's never good law. And that's exactly what's happening here. Now, California did pass this, I think, in 2017, and then Governor Brown vetoed it, partially on the basis that he hadn't disclosed his taxes. If you're going to make a rule about taxes, and you could, and the Congress could come up with them, and states can come up with them, that anyone running for public office has to disclose taxes. I'm not in favor of this, but at least then you'd have some justification that it's not just some type of politically motivated hit job on an individual. But we're seeing more and more of that lately. We're going to get into that when we talk about the Mueller report. And also, well, while we're on Moronica here, when you use also the Washington Post, this is an opinion piece, but it says, in Barr, Trump has finally found a man of integrity to bless his corruption. I'm just going to leave it at that. That is the headline there. And we're also seeing the head of the Judiciary Committee, Nadler, is looking forward to or prepared to put Attorney General Barr in contempt if he doesn't comply with the subpoena for the full Mueller report. What's interesting is the Mueller report has already been released to the public. An unredacted version has been put in a secure room for anyone to go look at in the Senate that has clearance. And they haven't looked at it. And there's a very, very small portion of information that is subject to its grand jury testimony that has not been released. And by law, he can't release it. But he can, if he so desires, to go to a court and ask for it to be released. But he has to have a reason, and he's not cooperating. There's no reason why we need to compel this grand jury testimony to be made available to Congress, and they're looking to hold him in contempt if he doesn't do that. All right, what else do we got tonight before we get into this stunning, it's not a stunning letter, the impact of it may be. This is the Emmett Flood letter, the White House counsel letter that was just, it was sent to William Barr on the day after the Mueller report was released, but was just released to the public late yesterday. Some other news here in China. Sun Tzu. Yeah, well, Kyle Bass, who's been a China bear for the longest time, is now taking aim at the Confucius Institutes in the United States. There are a few of them around the country, and I don't quite know exactly what they do, but he believes that they are a spying operation. And why does Confucius Institute need a server farm? They're an arm of the Chinese military. Close them down, says Kyle Bass. Now, it's interesting is that China views their philosophy or national mentality based on the teachings of Confucius, but the American and Western gold bugs somehow believe that the hiding of their gold reserves is some type of Sun Tzu strategy, but China prefers, it seems, as at least the Chi-Coms on a national level prefer Confucius over Sun Tzu and gold-backed yuans and petro-yuans and China to crush the dollar. All right, now, what else do we got? Crypto stories. We got a lot of crypto stories today. We'll go through those. Let's cover Facebook. Facebook is now making a lot more noise about trying to raise $1 billion to recruit financial firms, online merchants to launch a cryptocurrency-based payment system. And this, I guess, would be some type of stable coin. And then you can use this Facebook coin to make purchases across the internet. Now, yesterday we learned that Facebook purged, I think it was Laura Loomer, Alex Jones, Milo Yiannopoulos, Louis Farrakhan, and Paul Joseph Watson. I think those are the ones. And saying that they're all dangerous and hateful and so on, they had to be kicked off. Now, that should tell you that Facebook is in a position to tell people who's dangerous and to deplatform. They've been booted for life. No warning. They're just considered hateful, and they are not worthy to have a place on Facebook. Now, one would have to consider, if Facebook were to issue money, one of the issues that got me off the dime and starting to take Bitcoin more seriously was when India demonetized 80% of its cash. They just said, okay, by the weekend, you got to turn it in or it's not worth anything. And that's because you have an issuer, which is the Indian government, and they can do that. I used to think, why would you need a cryptocurrency when your dollars work just as well, your credit card works just as well, your bank account, debit card works as well, just as well, and cash works just as well? Well, that woke me up to the fact that a government can basically say your money's not good anymore. And we've seen since then, banks can also do the same. They can close your bank account, your credit card company can shut you down, your other payment methods like PayPal, they can shut you down. So the idea of privately issued cryptocurrencies without a centralized issuer started to make more sense to me if the understanding was my main concern about cryptocurrencies. Well, they're not backed by anything. We already have unbacked fiat currency, so why do we need this private decentralized currency? Well, I've answered my own question. That the common buzz phrase around cryptocurrency is it's censorship resistant and permissionless, which means no one can stop you from using Bitcoin or people sending Bitcoin to you other than really draconian things like shutting down the internet or shutting off your internet or smashing your devices. But the point is that a government can say, and they've done this in other countries, that certain notes over a certain number of years, they're no good unless you turn them in. And even if you turn them in, if you can't prove where you got them from or how you earned the money, then you're out and that money's no good. And we saw something similar in what India's done. Now with Facebook, the idea that they would issue a currency would make me very wary. I mean, that would be deplatformable money. They can issue, you can go out and buy $100 worth of Facebook coin, and maybe it's a stable coin and it's backed by $100. Now you've got $100 in Facebook. They don't like something that you did. They can just easily recall your $100 worth of money. So I'm not sure this is a good idea. Why anyone would want to buy this deplatformable money? I would think that if you could use a cryptocurrency that was decentralized, that you would know it could retain not necessarily its value, but it would retain your ability to spend it and to receive it for whatever value it might have vis-a-vis the fiat currency. So keep an eye on that. I'm not sure if this recent banning of people from Facebook is going to harm them, but I did see there was a tweet from Maria Bartolomeo, and she was complaining about this, and she forwarded her tweet to Trump and said that we will be hearing more about this, and Trump retweeted that. So that's another topic that maybe we can discuss one day. Just that issue is what, if anything, should be done by governments to prevent censorship on social media platforms. So if you're interested in that, we can have a full discussion on that one day in the future. All right, price on Bitcoin. Bitcoin had a big day today. It rose early this morning. It jumped higher, and about an hour and a half later, Litecoin and the rest also jumped. It's interesting to see that Bitcoin leading the pack again and now has a market cap over $100 billion. The entire crypto ecosystem is not quite at $200 billion. So Bitcoin holding over 50% of the value. So today, Bitcoin got as high as about almost 5,900. It depends on what platform you're on, but it did rise at one point about 7-8%. It's moved down a bit here. As I mentioned, yeah, crypto market cap approaches 200 billion. If you go to coin market cap, it's a good way of tracking the prices of the cryptocurrencies. Litecoin just under 5 billion, Bitcoin over 100 billion. I think it was like up to 102 billion earlier today. Some charts here. CoinDesk noting it as well. Market cap over 100 billion. First time since November 4th, and that was the day that Bitcoin dropped sharply from, it had been very stable around 62, 63, 6400 US dollars. It was tracking there. You can see it to the far left of the chart at the top, and then boom, it went down. But you can see since it hit its bottom in mid to late December and did a little bit of a dead cat bounce there towards the end of the year, it has been on a steady climb since the beginning of the year. It's up significantly since the lows of 32, 3,300, now at about 5,800. And we've got this annoys me all the time. When the price was dropping, I'm not going to name the names, all the supposed crypto experts all predicting lower prices. Yeah, because the price is going down. Now that it's going up, you get these guys all predicting higher prices. I'm not sure what the value is in these types of analysis. They try to tell you when it's going down, it's going to 2,000. When it's going up, it's going to 20,000. I mean, anyone can do that. I'm not impressed. Take the wheel for a while. All right, let's see. Oh, now yesterday we did an entire show on Wall Street and their issues or they're pushing cryptocurrencies. Well, we talked about RXX, we talked about Bakkt, we talked about Fidelity, we talked about E-Trade, TD Ameritrade. More news on that today. If you had any doubt that this is what's happening, that Wall Street is promoting cryptocurrencies because they know that they can boost this hit. This was from RXX Digital, and I say Wall Street on the need for financial intermediaries. That's what RXX is talking about in the crypto space, i.e. adoption for the world and billions for Wall Street. And again, why does Wall Street want to promote adoption of cryptocurrencies? It's not for some benevolent reason. It's not just a defensive reason. They know they can make a fortune. And here's RSX, which is invested in by, I think it's NASDAQ Ventures and TD Ameritrade, Fidelity, a whole bunch of big names and venture capitalists. So if you're interested in our vision for digital assets, investing insight, and how we set our member requirements, how we're leveraging our strategy, we invite you to read our new blog post. Now, that new blog post is entitled something along the lines of the need for financial intermediaries. So they're not hiding it anymore. How Wall Street intends to drive crypto adoption via regulated entities. It's the whole concept. Once you have regulated entities and all investors, institutional investors that are subject to all types of regulation, well, then they can participate in this grand new bubble that I think they are planning on hatching or blowing. Financial intermediaries is the title of this article from RSX and their role in attracting new investors. And this is hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right up and get your crypto fully regulated. RSX recently announced the launch of our spot market, the first part of our vision for unified digital asset spot and regulated markets. You see what they're trying to do here? They went through all this yesterday about how they were meeting with Fidelity and RSX and all the other companies at DTCC about what are the biggest impediments to getting institutional investors in. They're working on solving those issues. So now it's not just RSX because there was more news. This is an addition to what we talked about last night. You have the former CFTC chairperson, Gary Gensler, who's not really a fan of cryptocurrencies, but he's not in power right now. Still, he's saying crypto market needs regulations in order to grow. The undercurrent there is that they want it to grow, but they want also to be involved in the regulation. Now, all this is interesting. You're talking about financial intermediaries in a product which is basically peer-to-peer and doesn't really require any financial intermediaries whatsoever, but that is how Wall Street makes their money. Same with Silicon Valley. They don't do anything. They provide seed capital, and then the businesses do their jobs. And then the Wall Street doesn't do anything. They just bring those companies to market. They create securities or ICOs. They provide trading platforms, and then they financialize the products. They sell them. They rehypothecate them. They store them. That's exactly what they're trying to do here. It seems to me pretty obvious, but former chairman of the CFTC, Gary Gensler, said that cryptocurrency markets need regulation in order to grow. And yes, indeed, that is true. The current CFTC chairman also echoes these points. Separate places, separate days. He says, and he's called Bitcoin hero, he is in favor of this one. This guy, J. Christopher Giancarlo, is a fan of cryptocurrencies. He's the current chair. Gensler is gone. And he gave a speech, and he says, expect explosive spike in crypto interest. He's all in favor of this. And he's basically saying that when we have the launch of regulated spot exchanges, this thing is going to go nuts. So it seems to me that all the big money players and the regulators are looking for a way to make sure that they can put all this in place, get the ETFs going, the exchanges going, backed going, so they can have their crypto bubble party. Now, backed is saying, now who knows if this wasn't all orchestrated. One thing I've mentioned a lot is in 2017, I think Silicon Valley and Wall Street were and the regulators were looking at what was happening. Bitcoin rising from $800 to $20,000, billions of dollars worth of ICOs being promoted by knuckleheads and with YouTube channels and celebrities promoting him, and then Be Connect, what's up, remember that guy? And Wall Street is looking at this, and these amateurs are driving billions of dollars of revenue, and they're not getting a piece of it. So I think they realize they want this, and I think that's why we've had this hiatus, this gap period. I think the CME group came out with their Bitcoin futures. They were able to tap down the demand or the prices. And during the crypto winter, as I mentioned, all throughout 2008 and early 2019, an enormous amount of money went plowing in. That's why I did that video, just to remind everybody what happens after a bubble collapses. Well, generally, when a bubble collapses, it's, quote, game over. And no more interest in that asset if it truly was the type of speculative bubble like tulips, where you wouldn't see tulip kiosks popping up all over the Netherlands after the tulip bubble had burst. But indeed, we saw a large amount of investment moving into the space, including Backed, which is a consortium comprised of New York Stock Exchange's parent Intercontinental Exchange, and then also Microsoft, Starbucks, and the Boston Consulting Group. And they've used this time period, while they haven't fully got all the regulatory ducks lined up in a row, to make a lot of acquisitions, which they admittedly say they were able to get them on the cheap because of the crypto winter. And obviously, it also seems that they are going to have a bigger launch when they finally do launch, because they've added a bunch of companies that add custodial. They'll probably not just do Bitcoin. They'll probably have other cryptocurrencies. They want to do a Bitcoin physically delivered future. They want to have ways of converting the cryptocurrencies that they hold in storage into fiat through processing, so that they can have adoption, so that companies like Starbucks can accept Bitcoin via these services. And then we're also seeing that CME Group, it's an official success. Bitcoin futures reported record trading volume on April 4th. So we're seeing a lot of interest in the crypto space, a lot of effort to try to get people now interested in the crypto space. And Fidelity had a poll out, and that poll said 22% of institutional investors own digital assets. We saw last night how they're trying to say that there's like 43, maybe a total of 60% more want to get involved in cryptocurrencies. And a lot of this has, what are the problems? How do you get them interested? You need them to be certain about regulation, taxes, fraud, and that's what they're working on, making sure they can convince institutional investors the water's fine, you can come in, you're going to make your fortune, and here's how you're going to report all this stuff, your tax issues, your accounting issues, and you'll be fine with the regulatory compliance because we'll have 40 Act compliant storage and so on. You'll know what's a security and what's not a security. So that's where I think all this is headed. I'm not making up a narrative. I'm just following what's happening and creating my point of view based on that. It's not investment advice. It's just what I see happening. Now, what else do we have in crypto? Interestingly enough, also Bitcoin. I see people, they say they're still living in either 8 months ago, 18 months ago, 26 months ago, and they say Bitcoin is slow, or they say no one uses Bitcoin, they don't know because they may have known at a snapshot in time. But the point is, right now, Bitcoin transactions are very close to an all-time high, as is its hash rates, and Litecoin's hash rate is also right now at an all-time high. So this is not a sign of a dying ecosystem. The fundamentals are strong. This has nothing to do with price. It just has to do with usage and hash rate. They're all there. Bitstamp is pointing this out, that the hash rates of Bitcoin and Ethereum are still climbing back to where they were at their peak in 2018. They're very close, but Litecoin's hash rate recently reached its all-time high. And there's your Arise chicken there. That is actually a GIF that moves if you click on it, which we're not going to do right now. One final interesting thing about tokenized exchanges. Now, one of the points I made a while back was eventually not only will Wall Street support all of this crypto trading and tokens, but that companies, and we're seeing it now with Facebook, this is big Wall Street money, will issue their own tokens. Not only will they issue tokens for payments, but eventually securities, instead of doing an IPO, you'll do an ICO, and it'll be a security, but it'll be securitized in the form of a token. Now, it looks like, and I have her coming to America, Belarus Tokenized Securities Exchange, currency.com launches to the public. And that's basically what it is. It's a beta mode to offer trading and investment in 1,000 tokenized securities. No magic, you just have your securities, just like DTCC. Instead of tracking the security certificates, you put them in tokens and then you track them on the blockchain. Again, this is all big. That's just essentially an upgrade in how you track all this stuff. But again, it all ties into this crypto situation. This is akin to the internet and the internet bubble. And even though the internet bubble burst, today we live in an internet.com world. Every company has a website. Every company is on the internet. Whereas back in 1996, 97, there were internet companies and there were bricks and mortar companies. That doesn't exist anymore. Same thing today of tokenized blockchain companies, companies with tokens. Most companies don't have tokens. 10 years from now, they'll all have tokens. You'll be in a blockchain crypto world, and some of the companies that are around today, some of the cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin may not even be around. But the idea is that this is something that is being promoted. And there's efficiencies in it, and that's another reason to do it, not just to make money, but you do make money when you have efficiencies as well. All right, I think that's it on the crypto. We did the gold and silver. I mentioned Trump met with Putin. It's funny. He knows how to rub it into the press. He tweeted, "We discussed trade, Venezuela, Ukraine, North Korea, nuclear arms control, and even the, quote, Russian hoax." Very productive talk. Now, when he mentions the Russian hoax, he's making it. He's rubbing he's thumbing his nose at the Democrats and his opposition because they believe now what he's doing is he's teaming up with Putin and, saying, "Hey, listen, comrade, buddy Putin, wasn't that Russian hoax thing a big joke?" I think that infuriated people by even mentioning that. I mean, why should he discuss the Russian hoax with Putin? It just, I don't know what he was doing there. Okay, now, I believe, we're ready to get into this letter. This is a very important letter. I'm going to, in a sense, probably read it to you, but you'll see why. All right, so let's go back to when James Comey in I think it was July 5th, 2016, he announced his decision whether or not to prosecute Hillary Clinton for her violation of using a unsecured server, and for smashing her devices and losing 30,000 emails. And what he did on that occasion, first of all, it is not the FBI's job to make those decisions. So he's already done something wrong. But what he did wrong that I want to focus on was his listing of everything that he found during the investigation and reporting it out to the public and then saying, I'm not going to prosecute her. That is a huge problem because, first of all, he's not the prosecutor. He's the investigatory guy. But let's assume he is. You're not supposed to. It is unethical to list something that someone did if you're not going to prosecute him, because you're placing that person in a false light. Now, in this case, it was very strange because it seems apparent that what the FBI was trying to do was exonerate her. But by going out there and saying everything she did wrong, it made them look bad, not only because they're not supposed to do that, because if you're going to say you're not going to charge somebody, then you basically don't say anything. You just say, we looked at the evidence and we have no reason to charge her with anything. And again, it wasn't his job to do that. He's the investigator. This is why he got fired. Rosenstein wrote a memo, and the inspector general also said this was outside of what the FBI is supposed to do. Comey just came along to himself, decided he wasn't going to prosecute, but decided he was going to explain why he wasn't going to prosecute. And the explanation he gave made no sense. He listed everything she did wrong, and you sit there and you say, yep, okay, well, now you're going to have to indict her. And he says, no, I'm not going to, because she doesn't have the requisite intent. And again, in that statute, there is no intent. If you mishandle classified information, you're in a lot of trouble. And she purposely did it. That's why she had the private server. I don't want to get into the details there. The point is, that is a mistake, irrespective of whether he was covering for her or he honestly believed that she shouldn't be prosecuted. If you're not going to prosecute, you don't give out all the bad information about that person, because in a sense, you're damaging the reputation of the person. The only reason that person's reputation would be damaged if you actually bring the charges publicly. You don't say, I'm not bringing the charges, but here's all the bad stuff that the person did. Okay, that is what Comey did. Now, when the the Mueller report came out, and we've talked about this a couple of times, I mentioned that there was no need for 200 pages about how Trump might have obstructed justice. Because all that is just, I call that the Mueller dossier. It's just salacious. It's unverified. It didn't lead to a charge. And then what Mueller said, in the Mueller report, what it says is that, we can't come to a conclusion, but we can't exonerate him. Now, keep that in mind. Again, the prosecutor's job is to make a recommendation. It's either to prosecute or to indict or to make a declination decision, which means we're either going to go forward or we're not. If you're not going to go forward, again, it's unethical to say, well, there were a lot of things and here's 10 of them, here's 300 pages of stuff that, if we felt like it, maybe we might have brought something. And because of all this, we can't exonerate him. But again, that's not. Prosecutors don't exonerate. They indict or they don't indict. That's it. And that's why I was very surprised. And I mentioned this, that if I were Bill Barr, I would have sent it back and said, this is not a report. This is not a report that should have been delivered, because it's obvious why it was delivered in that fashion, not because that follows protocol for what a prosecutor should do, but because it gives the Democrats a roadmap to look at and say, oh, here's all the problems, and we want to pursue this further. And again, the thing that Mueller said the night before Barr testified, that he didn't like, and it made it sound like he thought that the way the letter was written, the way it was reported, the Mueller letter to Barr, they reported on it as if Barr was misrepresenting what Mueller said in the report, and that wasn't the case. And Mueller made that clear in the letter. It was also in the Washington Post article, but that Mueller was upset that because of the way Barr handled it and only releasing a 4-page letter summarizing the conclusions rather than issuing summaries of the report, that the media took it the wrong way. And again, that is not, a prosecutor is not supposed to be interested in what the media takeaway is. Well, all the prosecutor is supposed to do is say, okay, on obstruction, no or yes, and on collusion, no or yes. He's not supposed to say, well, there was a lot of stuff in there, and Bob, maybe you should have put out more information so they all could have had a feeding frenzy over it before you finally released the final report. So, keeping all that in mind, as a former lawyer, I thought that was outrageous that they actually put together 200 pages of stuff that, hey, if someone else was looking at this, you might want to look at it. And even if you don't find that any of it is a problem legally, it becomes a political problem because it looks like, oh, this Trump guy, he's a bad guy. There was one point in the Mueller, when Barr was at the Senate yesterday, I should have this, but I don't have it in front of me. Dianne Feinstein was saying, well, then Trump instructed his lawyer to spin it so that he wouldn't look bad. And then Barr looked at her and goes, well, that's not a crime. And then she looked at him and was like, yeah, it's not. But the idea is it makes Trump look bad. Since when does a politician not try to spin things to make himself look good? But that's exactly what the intent was of putting those 200 pages that Mueller did in the report and that Barr released to the public, so that people are thinking, oh, Trump's a bad guy. And of course, if people don't have a legal background, they don't know what obstruction is, and the Democrats don't seem to care whether they know what obstruction is. They know they can make political points by pointing out all the garbage that's in there in 200 pages, which, if Mueller, as a 50-year, having 50 years worth of prosecutorial expertise, either should have made a decision to indict or just said, I don't have enough evidence to indict, and that's it. But instead, he chose to put out those 200 pages. Okay, so now let's take a look at this letter. And I'm glad that the White House counsel actually picked up on this at the time. This letter that we're going to read from is dated the 19th, which I believe is the next day. And it says, and it was just released, though, to the public late last night. But it says everything that I was saying. So it gives now a roadmap to what's going to happen, how all this is going to play out. Because the Democrats are now in the position where they don't have collusion, and they're clinging to obstruction. Now, the problem with obstruction is that they still have to impeach, and they have to get 2/3 of the Senate to convict. It's not going to happen. And the only thing they can do is try to, and Mueller gave them this, quote, roadmap to try to come up with all kinds of ways to show that Trump's a bad guy and maybe he did something illegal. But he'll never see a courtroom because they've already declined to prosecute on this. Okay, so here's what the counsel to the White House had to say. And I'm going to go through it and I'm going to explain to you what it means going forward, because the title of this episode is the Mueller Report versus the Russian Hoax. And right now, the hand is much stronger for the Russian hoax than it is for the Mueller Report. For the last 2 years, the battle was that you had Mueller. It was Mueller time. Mueller was going to come up with the goods. Trump was probably going to be indicted for both Russian collusion. He was going to be frog-marched out for being out of the White House for being a traitor. And then if he tried to obstruct justice, then we're going to get him on that too. And that's over. They are still trying to figure out how to get him on obstruction. They're not going to be able to. They're going to try to hold Barr in contempt. They're going to try to impeach Barr. They're going to try to impeach Trump. They're clinging to something that has got very few legs left. And one of the smartest things Trump did, and I had mentioned this 6 months, 8 months ago, everyone was saying declassify. No, You wait until it's over. Either if they go to indict you, then you release the information as a defense, or in this circumstance where they haven't been able to come up with anything on them, then you release it and you show this was all a bunch of BS in the first place. And that's precisely what's going to happen. Trump has mentioned he's going to do this. He was on TV the other night with a Fox reporter. He said he was going to do it. Looks like it's going to happen within weeks or months. And also, Barr is looking into the origins of this whole Russian collusion narrative and all the investigations. And the Inspector General is going to have a report on the origins of the FISA warrants and potential abuse. So the tables are definitely turned on where the focus is going to be of the investigation, because the Mueller investigation is over and the Democrats are trying to prolong the investigation into the obstruction of justice. It's not going to happen. But let's take a look at this letter, and I'll give you the commentary on how this is all going to play out. So the next day, White House counsel, I think his name is Emmett Flood, says, I'm writing on behalf of the Office of the President to memorialize concerns. And these are the same concerns that I've had and had mentioned. It says the special counsel's office report suffers from an extraordinary legal defect. Absolutely. It quite deliberately fails to comply with the requirements of governing law. Remember, what the special counsel was supposed to do as a professional prosecutor was investigate and come up with findings. If all they wanted to do was find out what happened, you did not need a special counsel or a prosecutor. All you needed to do was Congress could have looked into Russian interference in the 2016 election. They could have had a counterintelligence probe. It would have nothing to do with a special counsel. They would gather information and report their findings, and it wouldn't just have been focused on Donald Trump. It would have been focused on Russians and possibly other countries trying to interfere in the election, and they probably would have wanted to speak to Clinton, to Bernie Sanders. What do I got to do with this? That's a good thing if you want to talk to me. And also the other woman who ran on the Green Party, Jill Stein. That's not what they did. This specifically was a special counsel under a statute whose job is to make a decision, either prosecute, indict, or not. All right. So that's the opening sentence there. Deliberately fails to comply with the requirements of governing law. Then there's concern that this type of report would set a precedent as somehow legitimizing that defect. And so he's writing to make the following points clear. And this is to Bill Barr. I begin with the special counsel's stated conclusion on obstruction question. The special counsel concluded that the evidence prevented it from conclusively determining that no criminal conduct occurred. Now, you know that's not his job. His job, a prosecutor, is not supposed to determine conclusively that no criminal conduct occurred. That's basically saying that we're starting with the premise that he's guilty and we couldn't figure out that he wasn't. And Flood goes on. Conclusively determining that no criminal conduct occurred is not the special counsel's assigned task, because making conclusive determinations of innocence is never the task of the federal prosecutor. Underscored, never. It's outrageous that this is, you had Comey come out and do what he shouldn't have done, which is explain everything Hillary Clinton did wrong, and they said, well, we're not going to prosecute her for that, then you don't say anything. But in this case, they actually started with the conclusion that, or the premise that we couldn't conclusively determine that Trump isn't a criminal. This is the top law of the land. The guy, that's why the White House counsel is writing to Barr, the Attorney General, and say, what is this? I'm surprised that Barr even released it. I would have sent the report back and said, I'm the Attorney General. I want to know your views on whether there was obstruction, and I want your views on whether there was conclusion. I want your recommendation. But if he didn't have a recommendation, all that source material that led him to not have a conclusion on obstruction of justice, I would have thrown it in the shredder, because it has because that's not for public consumption. And I would have taken the language out saying in the report saying that he couldn't conclusively determine no criminal conduct occurred, I would have said, Bob Mueller, that's not your job. And did you just not graduate law school? I don't know how this got into the report and why it's out there, but we know it's political in nature. It's not like Mueller doesn't know this. I mean, how can he not know that his job is not to conclusively determine that no criminal conduct occurred? So, Mr. Flood goes on, prosecutors are supposed to complete an investigation, correct, and then either ask the grand jury to return an indictment or to decline to charge the case. Yes, make an indictment or declination decision. That's it. We've been saying for a long time now. When prosecutors decline to charge, they make that decision not because they have conclusively determined that no criminal conduct occurred, but rather because they do not believe that the investigated conduct constitutes a crime for which all elements can be proven to the satisfaction of a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. Prosecutors simply are not in the business of establishing innocence, which is what Mueller came out and said. We couldn't establish he didn't commit any crimes, any more than they are in the business of, quote, exonerating, close quote, investigated persons. But that's exactly what he said. We cannot exonerate. And you see all over social media, all the Democrats talking about what Trump wasn't exonerated. Mueller threw that into the public domain because people don't know any better. And they say, well, the head guy, Mueller, said he wasn't exonerated. Okay, but I'm glad that the president's lawyer wrote this. He says prosecutors are not in the business of establishing innocence any more than the business of exonerating investigated persons. In the American justice system, innocence is presumed. Thank you. And there is never any need, italicized, for prosecutors to conclusively determine it. Nor is there any place for such a determination. Our country would be a very different and very dangerous place if prosecutors applied this special counsel standard and citizens were obliged to prove conclusively that no criminal conduct occurred. It's a very good letter. Because they do not belong to our criminal justice vocabulary, the special counsel's office inverted proof standard and exoneration statements can be understood only as political statements. Bingo star. Exactly as I said. This is a Mueller dossier issuing from persons, federal prosecutors, who in our system of government are rightly expected never to be political in the performance of their duties. To put all this stuff out there and say, look what a bad guy Trump is. He was doing all this stuff and maybe he obstructed justice, but we can't tell, so we'll give it to Bob Mueller. But we'll make sure we'll put the report out there. Okay. Second, and equally importantly, in closing its investigation, the special counsel only had one job. You got one job: to provide the Attorney General with a confidential report explaining the prosecution or declination decisions reached by the special counsel. I could have written this letter. Yet, the one thing the special counsel was obligated to do is the very thing this special counsel intentionally and unapologetically refused to do. The special counsel made neither a prosecution decision nor a declination decision on the obstruction question. Instead, it transmitted, it says here, I see 200 pages, a 182-page discussion of, quote, raw evidentiary material combined with its own inconclusive observation on the arguable legal significance of the gathered content. This should not have been in the report. I don't know why Barr allowed this in there. As a result, none of the report's Volume 2 compiled with the obligation imposed by the government regulation to explain the prosecution or declination decisions reached. The special counsel instead produced a prosecutorial curiosity. I like that. Part Truth Commission report and part law school exam paper. Far more detailed than the text of any known criminal indictment or declination memorandum, the report is laden, which means full of, with factual information that has never been subjected to adversarial testing or independent analysis. Right. So you put stuff in there. This person said this, that person said this. No, you say that this person said this and that person said this. It was never tested in law whether any of that is actually factual. In fact, Trump said certain things that are in there he says are not factual. We don't know. But if they don't rise to the level, if you want to challenge those facts, then you indict and you say, yes, we believe that's what's in here rises to the level that we're going to bring an indictment, and we say that this is our case. But you don't say, we're not bringing a case, but this is kind of the case we might have brought, and here's all the bad stuff that may have led us to bring a case, but we decided not to bring it. That information is accompanied by a series of inexplicably inconclusive observations. Inexplicable that it's coming from a prosecutor, says Flood in this letter, concerning possible applications of law to fact. This species of public report has no basis in the relevant regulation and no precedent in the history of special independent counsel investigations. An investigation of the president under a regulation